so much for having me, and I hope you all aren't feeling too sleepy after lunch because it was delicious. But thank you for your attention today. Thank you for the staff who put this conference on, and it's an honor to be among the panel of speakers that have spoken today. So mahalo, I'm very excited to be here. My name is Jill Wirt. I am the program director for Maui Marine Resource Council. I've been working with them full-time for about a little over 4 years now on Maui. I live up in Makawao. I've lived here for about 10 years. I studied environmental science and coastal and marine resource management in my master's degree. And I manage our Reef Friendly Landscaping Program. So it has sort of evolved from its inception in 2020. And we've gotten to be very creative with it, so I'm very excited to share it with you all on how it relates to stormwater runoff. Maui Marine Resource Council is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We've been working since 2007, founded by Uncle Ed Lindsay and Robin Newbold. It was formed as a way for community members to come together to solve problems that were affecting our coral reefs. And we do a lot of similar work from when we first started, but we've also grown and do more Mapa to Makai projects. So things like deer and ungulate fencing in Pu'uaniho'opui Gulch, all the way up working with Honolulu Ranch. We do coastal water quality monitoring, coral restoration, of course, reef friendly landscaping, limu testing, all sorts of things. But of course today, focusing on reef friendly landscaping. So our vision is healthy coral reefs, clean ocean water, and abundant native fish. And this vision drives the projects that we take on and the solutions that we work towards. We like to consider ourselves an organization that works with a variety of partners. If you come to us with a problem, we like to say, okay, let's find a solution. How can we help? While keeping the health of our coral reefs in mind. So our agenda today, we're going to do a brief biology lesson on what corals actually are, because I think it's good to just have an idea of what we're looking at on the reefs. Threats to coral reefs, impacts of landscaping specifically on reefs, our Reef Friendly Landscaping Program, and how we can take action in our landscaping and also design practices. So I know there's been a lot of talk about best management practices and construction, managing these areas. So talking about how to reduce our impact once those things are complete. We need healthy coral reefs. So I will let you know, I'm coming at this with a marine conservation background, right? I'm not a landscaper, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a developer. So you are all much better in those areas of work than I am. But I am here to challenge your way of thinking a little bit of how can we take our day-to-day work and have our coral reefs more in the back of our mind. By a show of hands, how many of you think about coral reefs every day? I do. It's like my Roman Empire, right? Yeah, some of us do. I think about corals every day. Everything leads to the ocean. Everything we do on land leads to the ocean. What are corals? How many of you think corals are an animal? A rock? Or a plant? Yeah, well, guess what? It's a little bit of all three. Corals are alive. They are animals, living organisms, and they have very certain thresholds that they like to live in. So things with like water temperature, visibility or turbidity, and then acidity as well. We're going to zoom in on the little holes in this beautiful Parietes lobata, or lobed coral, it's a common name, and take a look at a coral polyp. This is a cross-section of a coral polyp. As you can see here, the mineral part, or rock part, comes in with the calcium carbonate skeleton. The little polyp extends out, has these tentacles that reach out into the water column, and on those tentacles are tiny skin cells called nematocysts. And nematocysts are also what jellyfish and sea anemones have. So the nematocysts and the tentacles, they're reaching out, they're capturing about maybe 10 to 20% of its food from the water column providing that coral polyp its food. Now the other 80 to 90% of its food comes from photosynthetic algae called zooxanthellae. And zooxanthellae needs sunlight to make food for the coral. Oftentimes the zooxanthellae gives the coral its color. So in processes like coral bleaching, when the coral turns bright white, that's actually because the zooxanthellae are being expelled from the coral polyp itself. So when the zooxanthellae are leaving the coral polyp, it's losing its main source of food as well as its color. That's why we see that bright white discoloration on a bleached coral. And that this can happen from a variety of reasons. Warming ocean temperatures, as we know, there are bleaching events almost every summer now, especially on the Great Barrier Reef. We want to try to reduce our impact as much as possible because our corals are already under a lot of stress. This is a diagram. I know you can't read the tiny print, but it's from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, displaying different threats to coral reefs from land-based sources of pollution. There's a lot of things that run off on land from us that impact corals. What I want to focus on, again, is the stormwater runoff leading to sedimentation, carrying toxins, and I really liked what someone said earlier, I think it might have been Mickey, but sediment is a vessel for pollutants like pesticides, nutrients, herbicides, and such, as well as oil and chemical spills. And all of these impacts cause disease and mortality, disrupt ecological function, change dynamics and feeding behaviors, and it prevents coral growth and reproduction. Ways that we can help, and we'll go through this in more detail. We can apply fertilizers and chemicals sparingly, dispose of lawn clippings into a compost pile rather than letting them run off onto the reef to prevent excess nutrient runoff, and then cleaning up any fuel or oil spills as part of landscaping practices as well. Looking at this pathway of synthetic fertilizers, we are often applying these as a quick fix to instantly green our lawn or our plants and give them a boost of nutrients, right? However, these water-soluble synthetic fertilizers are often petroleum-based, and they are meant to dissolve at the first contact of moisture in the soil or rain that they're exposed to. So here, we're applying water-soluble fertilizer. It dissolves very quickly, and it is only intended to feed the plant and not the soil itself. Therefore, it only nourishes the plant for a short amount of time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, before it starts to transport through groundwater or surface level as well, and is transported into the ocean. In the ocean, the nitrogen causes excess algae growth, smothering corals, and causing reef loss. So there are alternatives to this synthetic water-soluble fertilizer. It also does not help soil microbiology, things like bacteria, protozoa, nematodes, and fungi. And it creates a very addictive cycle. When you apply this once, again, it's very short-lasting, so you're going to have to reapply it again to have the same effect. You're creating an addictive cycle for your landscape, causing increased costs, actually, over time. Now, the impacts of these common landscaping applications I briefly mentioned, but looking at synthetic pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, we see coral bleaching, aquatic birth and developmental effects, and feminization of organisms. So this is contributing to an endocrine disruptor or hormone disruptor for usually male organisms that would usually stay male can sometimes transition to female because of these chemical exposures. With synthetic herbicides, we see photosynthesis inhibition. So as the water becomes more turbid or more murky, it blocks the sunlight from penetrating through the water column for that zooxanthellae to photosynthesize. So the more sedimentation, herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers that we're applying and allowing to run off can greatly impact more than just the coral polyp itself, but the processes that allow the coral to survive. So we need your help. We can all take tangible actions through Reef Friendly Landscaping and the ideas that I've learned from landscapers. These are not new ideas from me. Help us prevent coral bleaching. So this is a really great side-by-side photo of what coral bleaching looks like. We have a healthy coral here on your left, and a bleached coral on the right. Turtles, also exposed to excess nutrients and chemicals, can sometimes get tumors around their flippers or their neck. And then we can also see algal blooms, turf algae that starts to smother reefs. I don't know, some of you maybe have seen the sediment runoff in North Kike or Kulakai, and we do reef surveys in that area, and they are covered with some turf algae over there too. So we are working, through the Reef Friendly Landscaping Program, targeting a smaller scale, local hotels, resorts, golf courses, to reduce their impact, but we want to broaden it up into landscape scale, Maui to Makai, and we're also working with Maui Gold Pineapple to implement a test plot with them using a biological soil amendment rather than fertilizers. So there's ways that we want to expand and sort of support that transition away from synthetics to reduce these impacts as much as possible. Reef Friendly Landscaping reduces harmful runoff from conventional landscaping practices, protecting coral reefs and ocean life. So there's three sort of branches in the Reef Friendly Landscaping Program. It started out again in 2020 as sort of an education and outreach awareness campaign about the impacts, specifically the health impacts of pesticides and herbicides to human health as well as coral reefs. Since then, in the past 4 years, we've done about 30 test plots with different properties around Maui. We've certified properties who are actually implementing Reef Friendly landscaping practices, which is very exciting. And then we've developed an educational course that's available online for anyone to take, utilizing local practitioners and their expertise. So you take quizzes, and you'll learn more about it in a minute. Okay, our test plots, we worked with a local company called Soil Thrive Hawaii LLC. They produce a locally made biological soil amendment, also known as compost tea. Has anyone heard of compost tea? Okay. Yes, so I learned more about soil microbiology in 4 years than I really anticipated I ever would, but it's fascinating. So compost tea, you take solid compost, and really if you have a 5-gallon bucket, you can make it. You take a handful of compost, you put it in a bucket of water, you feed it, you aerate it, allowing the microbes. So microbes are bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and nematodes. You allow them to multiply. And then what you're left with is this really microbe-rich liquid by just taking a handful or two of compost. So rather than having to rely on a large volume of solid compost when you're putting plants down, you can actually use a liquid form and start putting in microbes into the soil. So what we really wanted to focus on with these test plots was working with properties, assessing their soil. So what are the nutrients like? How deep is the topsoil? And what does the microbiology look like? Through these test plots, we applied every other week or so for 3 to 4 months, just spraying. And it didn't smell, which was great. One of the staff at Soil Thrive would actually spray it on himself just to show how safe it was. I was like, good for you. I would also help spray at Keopuolani Park. That was where one of our test plots were. And at that T-ball field, irrigation actually went out on that field specifically. What are the odds? And it still stayed green just by applying the compost tea. So over time, we would take additional soil samples. We saw increased topsoil depth. We saw increased microbiology, and then water retention as well, which I think is a very important thing to highlight. So we started just by looking at the soil, and I think Maui actually is doing a very good job at looking at soil health compared to maybe other islands. And just really understanding your place, right? Is your soil sandy or is it clay? What do the nutrients look like? And then really taking that information to inform your landscaping management plan, if that makes sense. So these are my soil microbe friends you see here. They're really important because they break down the organic matter and make nutrients more available to the plants. Microbes are very important, but when we apply synthetic fertilizers and chemical pesticides, it kills all of those microbes. So every time a chemical is applied, you lose your microbiome. It's the same thing when humans take antibiotics, right? You get rid of all the good bacteria in your gut, so you have to take probiotics. Compost tea is sort of like a probiotic. So very important, starting with the soil. Again, this is just a zoomed in diagram with Beyond Pesticides that they made, demonstrating the difference between chemical versus organic. And over time, organic and holistic land care practices will save money. There was a study done at a turf field with Beyond Pesticides. They switched and transitioned to completely organic, and they actually saw cost savings within the first 5 years. So it does take some time, but it's worth it. And that's what I want to challenge y'all today. I coach volleyball, and we just had this discussion with our team last night because we introduced a new drill to them. They're like, it's not going to work, the eye roll teenagers. And I would love we challenge them, instead of saying it's not going to work, what if we say, okay, let's try it? Yes. What if it succeeds? And I'm asking you all to try that same mindset with this, because I know it's different than what we're taught to do. Okay, here's our compost and compost tea that I talked about. Maybe too long with my microbes, but I love them. And then we also have biochar. This biochar was taken from West Maui Green Cycle, which is a partnership with the Nature Conservancy and Haleakala Biochar, taking invasive hardwood and creating this charcoal-like granule that's a soil additive as well. Biochar is very carbon rich, and it also has a lot of surface area in the granules. That surface area can provide great habitat for microbes. So it works great together with compost and compost tea because it gives homes to all those little bacteria and fungi and protozoa. We also want to switch to water-insoluble fertilizer. I know that just looks like dirt, but that is my photo that I took with Dwayne Sparkman. He made his own mix for me. Over at Kipuko Oluwalu. So these are just some alternatives instead of synthetic fertilizers we've seen really great success with in our planting projects and test plots. These are some photos of the case studies at Hale Royale, brown spots, Mahina Surf, also brown spots, and again applying every other week or so for 3 to 4 months, just using compost tea, no fertilizers, no herbicides. Hale Royale, we use this on ornamental plants, and then over at Legend Farm, which is down in McKenna. So like I mentioned, we are doing a test plot with Maui Gold. We've used compost tea to target whitefly and mealybug. We're doing that over at Kahoma Village, and that is a great alternative to pesticides as well. Our certification program, we have 2 levels. We have silver and gold. The gold properties, our first gold certified property was the Four Seasons on Lanai, and they were great. They, of course, have a much bigger capacity in landscaping teams, so the switch was a little bit easier for them to make than maybe smaller properties that we have here on Maui. In progress, Four Seasons Wailea, Maui Marriott Ocean Club, and Kahoma Village, and Papali Wailea. So that just looks like getting rid of what's in their closet that are chemical based, or working with landscapers that they've contracted with, providing them with alternatives and sort of reformatting their landscaping plan. These are the requirements between the silver and gold level. So we have a list of banned chemicals, banned pesticides, banned herbicides, and all synthetic fertilizers are banned. And you get to work with me. So I get to come and look at your inventory, your landscaping closet, and consult. And it's complementary, so I'll come and hang out with you and we can learn all about your landscaping products together. The gold level, the differentiation here is taking the course that I'll talk about next. Both require at least the transition to battery-operated equipment. Gold requires a full switch over to battery-operated equipment, and the reason for that is because of the reliance on fossil fuels and trying to steer away from that. The landscaping industry in itself uses a lot of fossil fuels. There's also a lot of fuel spillage as well that leads to runoff. When you switch to battery-operated equipment, you also reduce noise pollution. So when I'm working with properties like resorts or hotels, the noise aspect is really important. They have a lot of guests that are there for, the peace and tranquility, and the battery-operated equipment helps with that. We also know that the mining process for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium is very energy intensive, and that goes into synthetic fertilizers. So when we switch over to microbes and soil health, we really start to rely more on local composters here and supporting holistic land care practices. Another way to conserve energy as part of reef friendly landscaping is utilizing plants as cooling mechanisms, so we don't have to power our buildings with air conditioning all day and consume energy in that way. So really understanding your place and where we can use trees for shade. So I've talked about the test plots, talked about certifications. What does it look like for people to make the switch? And I'm hoping that my video will play because we made a video that describes our reef friendly landscaping course. So I'd love to show it.
E ka mano o ke kua, e ka kono o ke kua, e ke kua muki, e ke kua hawana mana, e ke kua kia i o kapo, e ke kua ala ala, o ke ao moe, e ihu e ala, e a kune ai au.
The Reef Friendly Landscaping Certification course is a course provided to landscaping professionals, property managers, and just generally anyone wanting to learn how to transition their land care practices from conventional and synthetic to reef-friendly practices. So things like using compost tea and instead of synthetic fertilizers and avoiding chemical pesticides and herbicides. There hasn't been a course available like this one that focuses on holistic land care management that also incorporates health of our oceans. This course provides resources such as teaching you how to do site analysis and design, understanding your area, understanding your place, understanding what plants should and should not go in certain areas, understanding alternatives to turf. You can plant native gardens, you can plant pollinator garden, you can learn how to malama aina from a Hawaiian perspective, learn about soil health.
What we're trying to do is trying to change people's thinking. How do they think about landscaping, right? Because right now, they're taught only certain ways. Think more of how does nature work? How does nature do things to protect our aina? This stuff was here longer than us, and it'll be here long after we're gone. And we have to understand that we're here for such a short amount of time. We are the servants of the land. The land is supreme, and we have to serve the land.
It's valuable in more than just learning and professional development because you also connect with other people in the industry. It's a shared experience, you create a wider network, and you build upon knowledge that has proven successful for generations.
I think the most interesting part of this course for me was learning more about how native plants adapt to their environment and what their actual role is and the ways to bring them back.
The knowledge that I've gotten from soil sampling, from planting, from just all of the native plants that are on this island have been great.
This course has two options available to take it. You can take it fully online and have it be self-paced. You can also join a online and in-person hybrid setup where you can take live Zoom classes online with our instructors and then attend in-person work sessions.
Out for a work day, and it was when we were filming, so we love that. I mentioned, and some people mentioned, the learning about native, exotic, and invasive plants, and that's one of the 10 topics that you learn about in the course. I pulled this slide from Tamara Sherrill. She teaches that section. She's at Maui Botanical Gardens. And what I want to focus on here is we have a lot of introduced plants. About 200 of them are very harmful and invasive and contribute to soil erosion. So when I'm talking about invasive plants, it's the plants that are able to establish and grow very rapidly regardless of the condition. And the primary source of new invasive plants is the landscaping industry. So when we're putting in plants that maybe aren't from here, they're imported, it can sometimes take up to 20 years for that first introduction for a plant to become invasive. So when we put it in right away, we might not know if it's invasive or not, but let's really try to understand the area that we're planting in, what plants should be in that area, what plants will work in that area. Because oftentimes native plants that are meant to be there have deeper root systems and create a much more diverse understory that are a lot better at holding the soil together and reducing sedimentation and soil runoff and erosion. How do we know which plants to put in, Jill? Well, let me tell you. You can go to plantpono.org and you can search your plant. They utilize a measurement called the Weed Risk Assessment Tool. Really high WRA score, probably don't want to put that plant in. Low WRA score is a really good sign. So plantpono.org, I relied very heavily on this for a grant application I did because we planted over in Kahoma Village as part of their post-fire recovery process in Lahaina. There's also gonativeplants.org. There used to just be a book called Go Native, and you could go by island and it would section out the moisture zones of the different islands and then help you figure out which plants do well in the different moisture zones, but now it's all online. So you can input your location and it will pop up a list of plants that are good for that area. So gonativeplants.org. And in terms of chemical alternatives and fertilizer alternatives, I worked with Dwayne Sparkman to create a list. So all of the chemicals that are listed on the certifications for Reef Friendly Landscaping, we've provided the name of the chemical, what it's typically used for, and then alternatives and how to use those alternatives. So you can scan that QR code and that's available for you as a resource as well. And if you want it, and if you don't have time to scan it, then just email me and I'll share it with you. So what's next for you to take action? You can take the online course. It's very informative. Each section you have a quiz to test your knowledge, and then at the end of the course you get to apply everything that you learned in a course practicum. So the course practicum is if a client were to ask you to design a certain landscape with X, Y, and Z problems or scenarios, which Reef Friendly landscaping topics you would apply to create that design. We've had some really great course practicums and really great references. Some of the resort landscapers have put those together. So overall, lots of good resources through the course. Take an inventory of what's in your closet. How do you landscape? How do your contractors or developers landscape? Are there ways that or things that they can do differently? Take soil tests to understand what your soil condition is and what it might need. There's also the standards for organic land care that was made by the Northeast Organic Farming Association. It's like a 70-page document, and that's where we sort of developed our course, was off of the NOFA standards, but it was very driven towards the environment of the Northeast United States, and that doesn't necessarily apply to us as well. So that's why we made one for Hawaii's unique environment. And then start composting your green waste. Oh, this Saturday, I would love to see you all again because we are doing an introduction to the Reef Friendly Landscaping course, and it's going to be in person over at the Hyatt Regency. We're partnered with Ka'anapali Operations Association, Aina Momona, and Pili Kahakai Foundation. Lunch is provided from the Hyatt, really delicious. But we'll learn all about Apupua'a management, site analysis and design with Jason Dennis, who is the lead landscaper over there. And then Tamara Sherrill will be there from Maui Nui Botanical Garden. We will also have a demonstration, a site tour visit, and then a demonstration about how to make compost tea with Johnny Klassen from Brew Hut. So there's Soil Thrive that makes the compost tea, and then Brew Hut with Johnny as well. So this is a great way to just get introduced to the topics and learn from the people who are experts in this field. And then on October 12th, to continue on with the weekend, we are having a beach cleanup over at Kahului Harbor. This is part of the International Coastal Cleanup. The Ocean Conservancy will be there. Aina Mamona, I believe, Surfrider, and Pacific Whale Foundation. It's going to be a really big community cleanup event. And again, our oceans have the issue of plastic pollution as well, so we want to try and reduce their impact as much as possible. So I'd love to see you all this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. That is our Reef Friendly Landscaping Program. Mahalo for listening. Again, my name is Jill, and I hope to talk to you all very soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jill, for that presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Jill? I now have a remote mic. I can walk up to you. We can discuss things if anyone has something they'd like to talk about. No questions? How about concerns? Does anybody have any concerns about what Jill discussed today regarding your projects and implementing those? Okay. Just real quick, just something I thought about there. Just compost tea, is that something other contractors and whatnot are using on island, or is that something proprietary to you folks, or
Anyone can use it.
Is there anyone that's doing it though? I don't know. That's something if they want to bring it to their project.
One of our test pods was with Ledcor at their Wailoa development down there in Wailea, and it worked really well. And I think the whole point of being here today is to just let people know that it exists.
Yeah.
And anyone can use it. You can reach out to Soil Thrive. Of course, these are smaller companies, so their capacity is limited, but they're growing. And I think the more support we can give them, the more ability they'll have to produce at scale.
Are you guys looking for other test spots? Or do you have all your data?
Right now, funding is limited in the nonprofit world, so the complementary test pods have concluded. But if you would like us to do one for you and sort of coordinate it, then we would be happy to. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Jill.
Thank you.